You're listening to the Estranged Heart podcast, and I'm your host, Kreed Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, welcome. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and listen with an open heart. But first, the normal disclaimer: I am not a licensed therapist or counselor. Nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. A couple of reminders before we dive into today's episode is there is the opportunity to participate in a research study for a licensed mental health counselor in her PhD dissertation. And I would like to just read a little bit about that right now so that we get that out of the way. This therapist's name is Ricky Buska. She's a 47-year-old wife, mother, and grandmother. She has been a helping professional for 25 years and a licensed mental health counselor and nationally certified counselor, practicing in Iowa for 16 years. She's dedicated to not only the service of aging Americans, but also to strengthening families and helping individual hearts to heal. At this time, in addition to seeing 30 patients a week in her private practice, she is writing her dissertation on psychosocial adjustments to retirement in parents who are emotionally estranged from their adult child or children they have raised. She wants you to know she is as sensitive to the experience of parents as she is to the estranged children. Her desire is to add to what is already known about the subjects of adjustment to retirement and estrangement. She is interested in the prevention of estrangement when possible, helping to heal broken hearts when it's not possible to prevent it, and the promotion of meaningful lives in retirement in spite of the estrangement. Her PhD will be on counselor education and supervision. She hopes to have great reach as a therapist in continued private practice, an educator of future therapists, and a supervisor of therapists. The only thing standing between her and her PhD is her dissertation. She is knee-deep in writing it, but cannot find participants. She is opening up recruitment for her qualitative project to national United States senior citizens age 60 and above. She is asking that you consider helping her gather information for her study. Again, she wants to learn about the experience of adjustment to retirement for people who, regardless of the reasons, are out of relationship with their adult children. Are you eligible? You must be a United States resident. You must be at least 60 years old and fully retired. You must be emotionally estranged from an adult child. You must have access to an electronic device such as computer, tablet, or smartphone. You are not eligible if you are a current or past patient of Ricky Buska. You are unable to have a conversation for 60 to 90 minutes. You are employed part-time or full-time. You are not your own guardian, or you have a serious mental health condition. If you would like to participate or have questions, please call or email Ricky at email address rickybuska@sacredspacecounselingcenter.org or her phone number of 563-258-2657. And you will need to leave a message for her there. And I'll have all of this in the show notes if you need spelling and or just to reiterate the number. And another thing is coming this week will be my Patreon membership, and just a little bit of insight to that. There will be different levels of membership, and those who are my Patreons will have access to additional bonus episodes. I'll take direct questions, do some live videos with my Patreon community, and there will also be a level where you can actually have direct contact with me on a regular basis, where we can delve deeper into your estrangement experience and how to heal and move forward and hopefully, if at all possible, to reconcile. So that's coming this week, and just be watching on social media for more information. So today's quote is, "Your children are not your children. They are sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they do not belong to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backwards nor tarries with yesterday." And that is from The Prophet, and written by Khalil Gibran. I was contacted by a grandmother, and a estranged mom and alienated grandmother, who asked me, she stated, the toughest part of the estrangement has been having been removed from the lives of her grandchildren. And she asked me, how did you deal with that constant pain? And so that set up the conversation for today's episode. My responses to her, I'll go over those, and I'll talk a little bit about some resources and things that might be helpful for you. But I want to start today's episode off by saying, I understand your pain, the deep pain of not being able to be involved in the lives of your grandchildren. And for those of you who are listening that may, I don't know, maybe there are folks who listen to this podcast that are not estranged. There are grandparents who have been told they cannot be involved in the lives of their children. There are grandparents who have just simply, their adult children have just kind of walked away from them and taken the children with them, and without explanation or insight. And there are grandparents who have grandchildren they have never met. And while I don't know the pain of having never met a grandchild, I do know the pain of being removed from the lives of grandchildren. And so that's where today's episode comes from, is my own experience with that. Again, it's my story, not yours. And it may resonate with you and it may not. Take what is valuable for you. Although I would encourage you to sit with some of the things that I'm going to say and explore them and give them more than half a nanosecond, as I like to say. Sit with it for a couple of weeks and kind of noodle over it and think about things that you may not have ever thought about before, right? And I understand that when you're in the middle of pain, when you are in the middle of suffering, it's very hard and difficult to have rational thoughts and be able to cognitively process things in coherent ways. But please try. And if you're not able to do that today, maybe tomorrow or down the week or down the road or next month or next year, maybe you'll be able to process a little bit of that. So just kind of stick a pin in it and come back to it if you need to. So this is one of the greatest pains, I think, in any estrangement experience, is if children are involved. And when I say children, I mean children, 0 to 18, who are collateral damage when it comes to estrangement. They didn't ask to be involved in it. They didn't ask to have decisions made for them. And it's just a part of that process that naturally comes with estrangement for many people. While there are some grandparents who, as parents, are estranged from their adult children, there are those that are able to still see the grandchildren, even though they have no relationship with their child, or the children have no relationship with their parent. They do allow their children to have a relationship with their grandchildren. I have found that to be few and far between. And so a couple of things that, as I was prepping for today's episode, I thought about and went back to my own experience and tried to reprocess a lot of that and some of my thoughts related to that. And I think that, I think it's important to recognize a couple different things. Number one, we're coming from two different perspectives. We, as the grandparents, have a very different perspective than our adult children do as the parents of their children. And I think sometimes that gets lost, right? In addition to that, what helps us with our different perspectives is our life experience, right? And your adult child's life experience is not as vast as yours because they have not lived as long as you have lived. And so there are blind spots that they are going to have because it is absolutely natural, because they have not lived life as long as you have. So they can't possibly have had the life experiences, the amount of life experience, and have garnered the wisdom from those life experiences like you have. So I think it's important to kind of keep that in mind, right? Another piece to this is, I know that when I was a parent, I did not want my mom telling me how to raise my children. And I think that can be at the heart of some of this when it comes to estrangement and the alienation of grandparents is, they don't want to hear it. They want their own opportunity. It's just like when they were teenagers, right? When we were teenagers, we did not want our parents telling us what to do all the time. We wanted to be able to go out and experience life. We wanted to make our own mistakes. We wanted to do our own things. And even as a mature parent, and when I say mature, I mean in age. I don't necessarily mean maturity. I mean age-wise. As a mature parent and now grandparent, we have, because we've lived all of these years and have had all of these life experiences, there are things that we can see coming, quote unquote, coming down the tracks that our adult children cannot see because they haven't lived long enough to see it. And this is one of the things that I talked about all the time and when I was in the middle of my estrangement, and other times too in my relationship with my children, was, oh my God, she's standing on the railroad tracks and I see the locomotive coming and I can't get her off the track. Doesn't she understand what's headed her way? And the answer was no. No, she didn't. She couldn't, because she didn't have the life experience that I had. And I didn't have a quote unquote right to yank her off of that track every time what I saw coming down the track was a locomotive, even though it might not have been a locomotive for her. And because I saw it as a locomotive, the reason I saw it as a locomotive was based on my own life experience and the experiences that I've had in life, which my life was not her life. So anyway, I digress. Our adult children, especially for me, I can speak from daughters, right? It was very much a mama bear, instinctual, protective thing, right? My daughter told me that I could not see my grandchildren because she did not want me to harm them as I had done to her. And no amount of me standing up and screaming that I was not going to hurt them and that I had no intention of hurting them and I had learned from my mistakes as a parent, none of that, she didn't want to hear it, right? She just didn't want to hear it. She couldn't hear it. And so she was very much coming from that perspective of Mama Bear. And when I was able to get myself into therapy and get, through the initial surface layer of shock and disbelief and pain and heartache, and I started delving into things, I could see that, right? I had hurt her as a mom. I didn't do it intentionally. I didn't do it with malice and, neglect her and all of these things, but I did hurt her. And she, in turn, did not want her children to experience that hurt at my hands, as she had done. And so, whether I wanted it to be or not, it was. And so I had to accept that. I had to accept that that was her reality. And there was nothing I could do to change that. Not in the moment. There was nothing I could. And my son-in-law told me that he would not help me to see my grandchildren because he said, I can't allow someone to see my son who hurts my wife. Basically, he was saying that I was hurting his wife emotionally, and so therefore he couldn't allow me to see his son because of that. So, again, it was in the past. Could I change it? No. Could I have done anything any different in that moment? No. It was what it was. And so I had to get to a place where I was like trying to figure stuff out. And so another piece to this for me that I came to the conclusion of was not only for my daughters, but also for myself, is there was a layer of jealousy. And I think that we tend to forget that as grandparents, as older parents. I believe that there was jealousy on my daughter's part because of the relationship that I had with my grandchildren. And it was not the same kind of relationship that she had with me when she was a child and their ages, right? And so she saw me being this happy-go-lucky, loving, huggy, touchy-feely grandparent with her children, and I was not that way with her. And that hurt her. And so, as we know, jealousy can be the green-eyed monster and can make us do lots of crazy things, because if we think about jealousy in context of any other relationship, what happens? Right? And why do we do it? Right? We feel fear being hurt. So that's another insight. And I think that, let's talk about my answer to this grandmother's question when she reached out to me. And I told her, I said, the first thing that I had to come to accept was that my grandchildren were not my children. They're not mine. They're not my children. And therefore, I don't have a say in how they are raised and who is permitted in their life and who is not. Unfortunately, I don't have that say. I am their grandparent. I am not their parent. The second piece for me was my spiritual beliefs. And part of that, it's not the entire belief, but part of that belief for me is that it is not up to me to determine what is right or wrong or best or not best for anyone, but also not for my grandchildren. It's my belief that the relationship we have with one another as a parent, child, etc., there are things in place that are there for our spiritual growth. And so I had to get back to that. And for me, because my spirituality is important to me, that was the place that I could go to and find peace and acceptance. And again, acceptance does not mean that I agreed with or thought that what was happening was right. It was just acceptance of my now reality. Okay. And the third piece for me was, and I didn't recognize this until I got myself into therapy. Again, stayed in therapy, started processing all of this, was that I viewed my being a grandparent as a do-over for how I parented my children. And our adult children do not owe us a do-over via their children. They don't. We are not owed a second chance. Is it nice? Would it be nice if they offered that, if they allowed that to happen, and they meaning our adult children? Absolutely. What a beautiful gift to give someone. But they do not owe us that. So I had to get clear with, number one, they aren't my children. Number two, my spiritual belief that it is not up to me to determine what is right or wrong for them or anyone else. And number three, I'm not owed a second chance. I'm not owed a second chance at getting it right for all the ways that I got it wrong with my children. I'm not owed that. And that my daughter was probably acting as I would have if I had been hurt by my mother. The times that I was estranged from my mom, and I've talked about that on previous episodes, I did withhold my children from her. Now, it wasn't necessarily that I recall. I don't recall ever having had that conversation with my mom that I'm not allowing you to see my children. It's just that I didn't offer for them to go over. I didn't respond to any of her inquiries for them to come over and things like that. So, all of that being said, I will say this. Our grandchildren, our adult children's children, are collateral damage when it comes to estrangement. They don't understand why Gigi or Nana or Grammy was there and they're no longer there. And they are only hearing one side of the story. And the fact is, that's reality. And the fact is, it sucks. And the fact is, it hurts. It hurts. I understand that pain. And it's not a pain that I would wish upon anyone. Because I don't know about you, but when I look at the faces of my grandchildren, the one sentence that always comes to mind for me, for each one of them, is, you are everything that is right and loving in this world. And when we're not permitted to be a part of that is right and loving with this world, it's a pain unlike any other. But through our pain, we can have growth. And through our pain, we can learn how to love bigger and deeper. It's not fun. It's not right. It's not, quote unquote, what should be. But it is what it is. And the more that I fought that, the more that I stood up and raised my fist and shouted to the heavens that it was wrong and it wasn't fair and they shouldn't be doing this and they shouldn't be doing that, the longer I stayed stuck in misery. And I finally had to get to the place where I said, for my grandchildren. I can no longer live like this. And I had to start finding my way out. A couple of the things that I did to help myself. I started a blog. It was a private blog. It wasn't out for the open to the public, where I wrote letters to my grandchildren. Every time I thought of them, every time I saw something that reminded me of them, every time I had a memory, oh, I remember when they did this or that or the other thing, I wrote to them. And that blog is there and available for them if and when the day comes that they want to know more information. I journaled. I wrote all the time. It helped me to get all of the thoughts, the crazy swirl of thoughts that I had in my head out. I got myself into therapy, and I stayed in therapy, where I had a neutral third party who could hear all of my pain and misery and all of that, and who helped me to learn to value myself even in the face of all that I was facing. Your grandchildren are not your children. Send love out to them if you're not able to be in contact with them. Send love out to them into the universe. Talk to them on your commute to the grocery store, or your commute to work, or on your way home from vacation, or on an airplane ride to visit other family members or friends. Speak to them. And that energy will find them. That love will find them. And it will help your heart too. There are still tears. I still, to this day, long for what I missed in my third grandchild's first year. He was just over 4 months old when my estrangement occurred, and he was over a year old when we came back together. Well over a year old. And I missed all of those first. And I'll never get those back. They're gone. I don't get any do-overs. But I can't change that. And you can't change that. But what you do have power over and what you do have control over is you. And you are deserving of not living a life of misery. You deserve to be happy. And you are worthy of being happy. Grieve the loss that you have. Grieve the death of the dreams you had as a grandparent. That's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to do it today and be over everything tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. It's a journey and a process. Give yourself some grace through that. I will hold your grandparent heart and my grandparent heart. Again, I understand the pain that comes when you see other people who are interacting with their grandchildren, and your friends are talking about all the great times they've had with their grandchildren, and you don't have that to talk about. I know that pain. So I'll hold you in my heart. So that brings this episode to a close. I hope that this time together was time that you feel well spent, and that you're able to find some takeaway nuggets to help you on your journey. wherever you may be on that estrangement and reconciliation path. If you feel you've received something helpful or positive from this podcast, please consider following us, sharing this podcast with others, and perhaps leaving a positive review. You can also follow us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under the same name, The Estranged Heart. And if you're interested in having your story shared as either an estranged parent or an estranged adult child, please reach out to me via email at theestrangedheart@gmail.com. Again, theestrangedheart@gmail.com. And that can be done anonymously or not. And I'd also like to let you know that in the show notes, there will be lots of different resources there, but also I want to talk about, just for a moment, I do have an online support group for estranged moms on Facebook, and if you would like to join that group, I would love to have you be a part of the group. There are some requirements, if you will. My group is pretty small. It's only just over 500 members compared to other groups that have thousands of members, and it's because my group is very intentional, and that intention serves a purpose, and it follows in line with this podcast as well. And so if you consider yourself to be spiritual and not necessarily religious, this group might be for you. And if you approach estrangement with a sense of curiosity rather than blame and judgment, this group might be for you. And if you also desire to do inner self-reflection and self-work, then this group might be for you. One of the things that I do not allow in my group is any sort of derogatory statements, name-calling, medical diagnosing of mental illnesses and such of either other members or our estranged adult children. And that's something I'm pretty heavy-handed with. I just don't allow it in my group. And a lot of people choose not to stay in my group because of that. So, but if that all fits for you, then I would encourage you to join. And you can find us at facebook.com/estranged mothers support group. Again, facebook.com/estranged mothers support group. You can also just search that in the Facebook search bar. And hopefully one day I'll be able to have a support group that will allow both estranged adult children and estranged parents, but not of the same family, to be members of, so that we can learn from one another, we can hear each other, and hopefully heal and grow as human beings, and grow in love instead of hate and discord. So that is all for today. Until next time.